A history lesson on SSO single sign-on. Let's go back to the 1980s where it all began. You see, back in those days, computing and networking were not as modern as they are today. In fact, computing then was very expensive and largely unknown, a mystery to the wider public. But one thing was for sure: the coinciding rapid expansion of computer networks and internet based applications grew computing into the mainstream and, in turn, the need for single sign on SSO. Fun fact: the whole concept of SSO began in an educational institute in the United States known as MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. MIT was challenging the status quo and wanted to become the pioneering technological institute in the world. Yes, even back then in 1983. MIT succeeded by producing an ambitious project known as Project Athena, which gained traction and funding from various big corporations such as the Digital Equipment Corporation and IBM, who believed in the goal and the ambition to produce a campus-wide distributed computing environment for educational use. This was pioneering and even revolutionary for its time. You see, before Project Athena, there was no internet access or email or no easy way to share files or no standard anything. You could say the students at MIT wanted the Internet of Things before they really knew what the Internet and the things were. But they knew that they wanted an easy way to sign in to all of these things in one large interconnected realm. Blows your mind really when you think about today and how this pioneering Project Athena still has largely ingrained roots in everything we do today. I mean, consider an alternative thought theory. Had MIT never received the funding or the vision to produce Project Athena, we may never had the concept of single sign-on SSO as we know it today. That would mean you would not be able to enter your username and password once and sign into anything across the internet with just the same login. How annoying and frustrating would that have been? Oh yeah. You could even say the concept of SSO was $100 million idea. But thankfully, the resulting outcome was fairly successful and shaped the future as we know it today. The concepts of many technologies we know today were then produced in Project Athena under different names, of course, but this shaped the futuristic ideas of the art of the possible. And a very important CISSP exam note and history keynote. In terms of the SSO output of Project Athena, this was Kerberos, which was an identity and access management solution used on premise and closely linked to Windows and Windows Active Directory. Cool, fun history fact: Project Athena was named after a prominent figure in Greek mythology known as the goddess Athena, who was the revered goddess of wisdom, strategic warfare, and handicrafts. Given there was no such thing as TikToks, Instagram, Facebook, etc., and no real concept of SSO in 1983, you can see why students back then used analogies and naming conventions of Greek mythology. That was what made them cool in 1983. Oh yeah. In fact, the Greek mythology analogies and naming conventions did not stop at Project Athena. Remember when I said the solution that came out of Project Athena in the SSO world was known as Kerberos? Well, again, in Greek mythology, Kerberos is the multi-headed dog that guards the gates of the underworld, and I should add, prevents the dead from leaving and the living from entering without permission. You could say that is identity and access management. Hence, this was named Kerberos for the then pioneering SSO solution in 1989. Interestingly, at the time of Kerberos's release, there was no such thing as the HTTP protocol or even SSL for that matter. These are the core concepts that drive the modern internet today, and it blows your mind that Kerberos was made before these even existed, by quite some number of years. But amazingly, Kerberos has managed to survive the test of time. But due to the time that Kerberos was released, there are many flaws inherent with the Kerberos protocol. Kerberos nowadays is restricted mainly to on-premise solutions that integrate with Active Directory and Windows domains, so this is not too much of a problem in the modern internet world, and newer versions and even newer protocols have since been released. In terms of the release history of Kerberos, here it is on the screen. Version 4 was the original release, however, version 5 is the newer, modern release and the most current version as of today. And just to recap an important exam note, what was the purpose of Kerberos? Well, it was to allow secure access to systems over an open network while avoiding the exposure of clear text passwords and sensitive data being sent over the wire. Quite spectacular when you consider there was no HTTP or even SSL protocols in those days. Fast forward the years to the year 2000 and Microsoft Windows 2000. This is when Kerberos became a big deal. You see, Kerberos and Microsoft have had a relationship since the year 2000. What originally started as an internal research and development project inside MIT through the use of Project Athena became a real protocol used in a real operating system in the real world. In fact, Kerberos replaced Windows NTLM, the authentication protocol or the default protocol at the time, making Kerberos the core component of Windows Active Directory AD and various Windows domain related services. In other words, you could say Microsoft digged the three-headed doggy. Oh yeah. However, this relationship would be restricted because Kerberos was an on-premise solution, which meant it was within the domain inside the local area network. And as the world evolved, the need for interconnectivity across borders and the internet became more and more apparent. And by the 2000s, new protocols were being developed and even released. These were more modern and, more importantly, compatible with the external universe, in other words, the internet. Such external SSO services include SAML and OpenID Connect. But following history, first came SAML, then came OpenID Connect. So what was SAML? Well, SAML stands for Security Assertion Markup Language, and it was developed in 2001 and released in 2002 and is ideal for enterprise SSO across the internet, and it uses XML and SOAP-based requests. However, SAML was quite complex and burdensome and was thus used for enterprise SSO, but was not the ideal solution for smaller web-based and mobile applications. This is where OpenID Connect came into play, as it was designed to be the modern replacement of SAML, but in reality it just complements SAML but uses a less complex way of doing things. Think of SAML and OpenID Connect as complementary protocols, but at the same time two separate protocols. An important technical keynote is that OpenID Connect sits on top of the OAuth framework, meaning the OpenID Connect layer is used for the authentication and the OAuth framework is used for the SSO portion, whereas SAML was just everything built into the protocol done properly the first time. And here is a summary of the SSO protocols discussed in this video in the top of the screen. And there you have it, that summarizes the history of how these SSO protocols came into existence. And I feel this history is important before understanding each of these protocols at a technical level. And I wanted to make this video to fill a gap on the internet because during my CISSP studies I could rarely find a clear and simple example of how all the SSO single sign-on solutions came into existence. I have tried my best to make this video entertaining and lightweight given the complexity of the SSO subject, and I appreciate that I have not covered the protocols in detail and technical depth, but there are separate videos on my channel on Kerberos, and I will be producing many newer videos including on SAML and OpenID Connect. If you would like such videos, please be sure to like and subscribe to help support this channel. Thank you for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed the content as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you would like to see more content like this, it would be super fantastic if you could leave a like and subscribe to help support this channel's growth.